BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Sutherland, and this is a bumper European edition of the Scottish Football Podcast. It is Thursday, the 24th of October, and here's what's coming up.
I'm not sure whether that was pragmatic enough for people tonight. I don't know, but I think the confidence that it gives you when you can defend against the very best teams at that level, it'll give them a huge boost.
What does a valuable away point mean for Celtic's Champions League ambitions? And it's a busy Thursday night ahead too.
Watkins is chasing it. Marley Watkins with a strike! Marley Watkins with a goal!
Can Rangers bounce back from that Kilmarnock defeat as FCSB come to Ibrox? And European nights are always special at Tynecastle.
Devlin again into the box. Goal! Cammy Devlin! And Tynecastle is losing its mind!
Can Critchley and co keep the happy hearts vibe going?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
We are joined today on the Scottish Football Podcast by Asim Rabbani from A Celtic State of Mind, Mark Atkinson, sports editor for The Scotsman, and John Walker, coach, analyst and host of the Scots Abroad podcast, and this is Ibrox contributor. Asim, first to you. One word that right now, for you, sums up how you feel about Celtic.
Good morning, Jonathan. Proud of that performance last night. I think a lot of Celtic fans went into that game last night fearful on the back of what happened in Dortmund. All the hype and talk about how good Atalanta are, which we've seen. They're a very good side. I think we were just worried that we're going to see a similar kind of scoreline and performance, but it was anything but stark contrast. And I think took everyone by surprise. So safe to say, really proud and delighted with that result and performance last night.
We'll get more into that very soon. Mark Atkinson, for you, one word that sums up Hearts right now.
Transitional.
That'll do. We'll get more into Hearts later in the podcast, Mark. Thank you very much. That's perfect. Transitional. And John Walker, same question to you, and we'll get more into Rangers as well. But one word for you that sums up how you're feeling about Rangers right now.
Inconsistent.
Okay. Lots to discuss with the guys, but first let's take a quick look through the Scottish football headlines. A terrific defensive display earned Celtic an important Champions League point as they held last season's Europa League winners Atalanta to a goalless draw in Bergamo. They resisted periods of intense pressure from the hosts to take a significant step in their bid to reach the knockout stage. Hearts' Neil Critchley is expecting a real test from Omonia Nicosia as a new manager prepares for his first taste of European competition. Hearts with victory against Dinamo Minsk 3 weeks ago in the Conference League. Duncan Ferguson's left his position as manager of Inverness Cali Thistle after the Scottish League One club was put into administration on Tuesday and deducted 15 points as a result. It's left on 12 points adrift at the bottom of the table and facing relegation to League Two just 8 years after they were in the top flight. Let's start in Bergamo. Atalanta 0, Celtic 0. Asim, I think a lot of Celtic fans, nay, a lot of Scottish football fans were fearing the worst for Celtic after the 7-1 drubbing by Borussia Dortmund. So, you've touched on it already. Just how elated are you by this 0-0 draw? 0-0 draws don't usually get the pulse racing. Apart from that Scotland one against Portugal the other night, they've suddenly becoming quite fashionable.
Yeah, exactly, Jonathan. I think there's been a lot of talk about pragmatism and styles, philosophy, and the manager's been pretty bullish. Brendan Rodgers has said he's going to stick to how he likes to play football, and I think for Celtic fans, we just wanted to see a team that competes and stays in the game. And against quality opposition like Atalanta, I think that's all you can ask for. And I think for us last night, it was all about seeing progress and seeing that lessons were learned. And I think that's what we can take away from that performance and result. Look, it wasn't perfect by any means. There are things we can improve, especially going forward. But when you're coming up against Serie A's top goal scorers, the Europa League current holders, you know you're going to come under intense pressure. And I thought some of the defending last night, Scales, Trusty, a lot of the guys who've came under a bit of criticism, they really stood up. And it was as a collective squad and team effort. I think there's a lot that we can take forward from that, a lot of confidence going into the next games.
Talking about Brendan Rodgers being bullish, almost a little bit combative in terms of his language, in terms of the criticism that came Celtic's way after the 7-1 defeat by Borussia Dortmund. What did you make of the way he set the team up yesterday, following all that criticism and just in the way that he reacted to it? Was there much different, or what was different about Celtic for you?
Yeah, he's came out after the game, and again, he was quite combative and bullish in his remarks. But I think it was noticeable that we didn't have centre backs playing up at the halfway line. Scales and Trusty weren't defending, pressing up high at the halfway line. There wasn't massive gaps between the midfield and the defence. When you're playing up against pace, the likes of Adeyemi, that was obviously for Dortmund, and last night Lookman, you can't be giving them that much space in behind. And I think that's where Celtic were noticeably different last night. We were defending the box. We were making Atalanta work for any openings that they had. And look, they had a few, but it wasn't through our own, defensive naivety, put it that way. So I think it was just a lot more organised, and just you could tell that there was a lot more tightness within the group, and I think that's all that we could ask for. We defended the box brilliantly. We had to put our bodies on the line at times, but we expected that, and I also thought we carried a threat as well, more so than we did in Dortmund. So for all the talk of styles and playing a defensive way, I still thought we carried more of a threat last night than we did in Germany.
Mark Atkinson, how would you sum up the difference between Celtic against Borussia Dortmund and Celtic against Atalanta, apart from the scoreline, obviously?
Firstly, I don't think Atalanta are quite as dangerous as Dortmund going forward. Not to take anything away from Celtic's performance last night. It was excellent. So that helped. Secondly, the two centre-halves just put in the sort of performances you get once in a blue moon. Until probably the 90th minute, when they both made individual fouls to stop attacks, I don't recall Austin Trusty or Liam Scales making a mistake. They put in a classic centre-half performance, and there were really no major individual errors from the Celtic team. Kasper Schmeichel played very well. The whole back four played really well. Alistair Johnson defended exceptionally well, given that he was on a booking from 8 minutes onwards, so they kept their discipline and their concentration. And when you hear Celtic players in the aftermath of Champions League defeats talk about learning from defeats, I've heard that quite a lot in the past couple of years. I felt last night was the first time I've seen a Celtic team learn individually and collectively from what's happened in the past, and that should give them great confidence and hope going into the next set of fixtures in this Champions League, because they have a point that I don't think many people envisage them having, and that's an enormous boost for the Celtic team given what happened against Dortmund and also against Aberdeen at the weekend.
Yeah, fantastic night for Brendan Rodgers and his players. Really well-deserved point. Asim, just finally on Celtic, will this make Celtic's European opponents more wary of them? And next up for Celtic, back-to-back home matches against RB Leipzig and Club Brugge. All you Celtic fans must be fairly confident in terms of what you might get from those games as well.
Yeah, the talk is that 10 points is kind of the golden number to try and get through or guarantee yourself a place in the playoff. And 4 points from 3 games with 2 of your toughest away games, potentially out the way, it puts us in a really good position. In terms of how the opposition look at Celtic, I think it shows that we've got another side to us. We can, defend it out if we need to. We can be dogged and resilient. And at Celtic Park now, 2 games, we're playing Leipzig and Club Brugge. We're going to be a bit more attacking in those games, I'd imagine, and we'll be feeling a lot more confident. I think the feel good factor's back, which after the Dortmund defeat was obviously, we were fearful for these games going forward. So yeah, I think we can now look forward to the rest of the campaign in a confident mood, and look forward to that Leipzig game in 2 weeks, full of optimism.
Asim Rabbani, you can go on now and enjoy the rest of the week, up until the weekend, certainly anyway. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Right, let's forget the Champions League for now and turn our attention to the Europa League. Rangers play their 3rd match in this season's competition against Tonight's opponents, Romanian champions FCSB in Glasgow. Right, John Walker. I was at Rugby Park on Sunday and I saw how angry the Rangers fans obviously were with that defeat. How big a match is this for Rangers and Philippe Clement?
The whole week. He's got 3 games ahead of him in the next 6 days and he has to win every one. He can't let that go. Tonight's an absolute must-win if we've got any chance of getting through the Europa group stages after the Lyon game. I do think this is a team that we can beat if everything aligns, but with Rangers, as I said, inconsistent. You never really know what team you're going to get or what type of football you're going to get and how everyone connects. So it's hard to get up for this game, but it's a team that I do believe we should be beating.
Mark Atkinson, let's talk briefly about that Kilmarnock defeat before we get more into FCSB. How fragile do you see Rangers right now going into this European match?
They are fragile from top to bottom. There are so many issues at the moment, right from boardroom down through to management and then players. There's a confidence issue, there's a cohesion issue. They, like John, I look at this game and I do expect Rangers to win because they're at home against a side that I think they should have the measure of. But the problem that Rangers face now is that a lot of the fan base, if it hasn't already turned, is starting to turn, and that's going to make Ibrox a more difficult place to play at. We've seen this Rangers team struggle in a hostile environment in the past at home, and they need to do something tonight to turn the tide. We always knew that given the starts of the season they had, dropping points early on in the league, that they were 1 defeat away from the heat being turned up, and we're now at that point, and that there's very little room for manoeuvre now for Philippe Clement and this team domestically and on the continent. There has to be a response tonight against Steaua.
It's been interesting in terms of Rangers in Europe so far. Obviously beaten by Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League qualifiers. I think they surprised a lot of people with that excellent 2-0 victory away against Malmo. Obviously then losing 4-1 at home to Lyon. In terms of FCSB, and I should just say they are the Romanian champions, how they relate to the club Steaua Bucharest that won the European Cup in 1986 is a very complicated and contested thing and deserves its own podcast. In fact, there's a very interesting article on the BBC Sport website from a couple of years back if you want to delve into all that sort of stuff. Anyway, John Walker, what sort of team are FCSB and how will they approach this game? There's been a bit of cheekiness I see in the papers from their owner, Gigi Bacali, apparently naming the starting 11 a couple of days in advance and all sorts, apparently, according to reports. But that's all the circus of football, isn't it? In terms of the actual football on the pitch, how are you looking at it? Yeah, so they are the champions of Romania. They were a very attacking side last year. Quite direct, to be fair. Not a lot of playing out from the back. But once they're in the final third, they're a real threat. Their wingers last year, Olaru and Koman, contributed, I think, like 78% of their goals. Through goals and assists, so very dependent on the wide men, not scared to shoot from range. The benefit going for Rangers is Koman gets sold in the summer and Olaru got sent off in the last game, so both those players that contributed most of the goals in their title win last year are not playing at Ibrox, which is one of the things that gives me the most confidence. Berliglia up front has got goals in him. Other than that, it's Octavian Popescu from behind, who again, both feet, not afraid of a shot from range. That's where the main danger comes from, but I'd be expecting that. This could be a game of hoofball. This could be like Rugby Park Part 2. Both teams going pretty direct if they can't get through the press. But as I said, from the team that won the league last year, they're missing their 2 most creative players, one being sold, one being suspended. So quality-wise, how would you compare them with Rangers? Because I noticed that they have won both their matches so far against RFS of Latvia and PAOK of Greece. I don't think they're even as good as Malmo. I think Malmo are a better all-round side than them. I think Malmo were actually good against Rangers in Largs. I think Rangers hit them in the counter perfectly. So I think that is a measurement of who we've already played against. I don't think they're as good as Malmo. Interesting. Prediction-wise, Mark Atkinson, what are you feeling in terms of Rangers against FCSB? Always difficult to predict when you've got such a inconsistent team in terms of Rangers. However, I do think they are going to win tonight. I think it could be a scrappy,
1-0 victory. I don't expect it to be pretty. This team they're up against, I think the result against Pauk is quite telling. Pauk are a decent side, and they won there with 10 men, held on to a 1-0 victory. That shows that they're up against a resolute opponent. But quality-wise, like John, I think Rangers have got more in their armoury. They just need to bring it out. I think they'll get over the line, but it'll be tight.
And John Walker, what's your prediction at Ibrox?
I would go along with that, 2-0 or 2-1. I think it'll be a tight game. I can't imagine the Rangers opening up too much. I think even if Rangers get a lead with everything that went on after Rugby Park and the fallout from that and everything that's going on behind the scenes, I think it'll be that way that it'll get nervy. So even at 1-0, 2-0, Rangers fans could be kind of on the edge of their seats a little bit.
Finally, on to our third European competition of the episode, and it's time to turn our attention to Tynecastle, where Hearts will be taking on Omonia Nicosia. Right, Tynecastle, an interesting one. I must admit it wasn't rocking for the Victoria Pilsen match, which I was at, which I thought was strange, but those were subdued times for Hearts. It's been a tough start to this season. Mark Atkinson, given the rousing victory against St Mirren, will Tynecastle be back to its best?
Maybe not quite to its rocking best, but there'll definitely be more positivity in the stands. That was a very, very big win for Neil Critchley in his first match, albeit against a team and opponents at Mirren that were well beyond their own capabilities. But what it does is it gives his tenure the best possible start. This is another winnable match for a Scottish team in Europe. Cypriot sides, by and large, don't tend to travel that well. Omonia are missing a couple of key players, one of which being Stevan Jovetic, a name that people might be familiar with from his time at Man City and Inter. One of their sort of better creative players. He's not been registered in time for this competition. And they're actually in a little bit of trouble themselves. Domestically, they've lost 3 of their opening matches. They're 7 points off the top, and this is a team that's expected to compete at the top of the Cypriot League. So I think there'll be an expectation level from Hearts fans that they can get the 3 points here. If you look at their opponents in this competition, there are some very winnable matches. They already have 3 points away from home in the bag from their game against Dinamo Minsk in Azerbaijan. And Neil Critchley has already got a tune out of the team. He put them in a sort of 4-4-2 formation at the weekend. He put Kenneth Farkas and Lawrence Shanklin together. And as a result, they looked far more potent than they have done under Liam Fox and Stephen Naismith of late. So there are many reasons for Hearts fans to turn up tonight at the slightly odd kick-off time of 5:45 for them and expect a victory. I think if they can get that, it puts Hearts in a really good place. And it's amazing how the mood around a club can change. So I have a bit of confidence around Hearts this evening. I think they can get it done against a team that, a team that doesn't look like it's in its best place right now in Omonia.
On the dedicated Hearts page on the BBC Sports Scotland website, there's a few recurring words being used by Hearts fans, including positive, feel-good and freedom in terms of the impact Critchley's had so far. I must admit, Mark, I almost felt a little bit sorry for Neil Critchley because he seemed to have already been judged before he even started at Hearts, but then suddenly 4-0 victory against St Mirren changes the opinions of anybody who's a football fan, obviously. How is his style different from Naismith? You've touched on it a little bit, and how much do you think he'll be relishing tonight's match, given the way he started?
He'll be relishing it. We spoke to him last week at his unveiling, and European football was a big thing for him. He's managed in England in the Championship, League One, but never has had the taste of this type of game as a frontline head coach. He's vastly experienced in managing a team that's got a busy schedule, given his time in England as well. They're used to playing this sort of turnover of matches. And he's excited. His press conference was actually quite low-key, and I think there was a negative feeling around his appointment, but the only way you can change that is by winning football matches and playing decent football. And in the very limited evidence we've got of Hearts so far, he's got that. He seems quite a grounded individual. He's different to what Hearts have had in the past. They've obviously gone down a different route in terms of the data that they've used to try and get a coach in. They want a coach that's going to be, in the first instance, be able to improve what's already there because the squad is underperforming. And their football, he likes attacking football. He likes to press quite high. He tells his team to attack with the ball and without the ball. That's one of his big mantras.
Mark, I just wanted to get to the bottom as well in terms of the negativity. What did you put that down to? Was it just because he's not a very, very well-known name, basically, and he's had, I suppose, ups and downs down south, but then so do so many people in football?
Yeah, so the negativity comes from that his past 2 jobs, he's been sacked by Blackpool and QPR, clubs that I think Hearts fans will look at and go are no bigger than us. They also were relatively close to appointing a different manager in Per Matthijs Hogmo. So Hearts fans probably got themselves excited about that appointment, and then they had to go to Critchley as their plan B. All of that doesn't help. He's not the most glamorous of managers, you would maybe say. He's a little bit more streetwise and low key, and maybe Hearts fans expected more. But sometimes that's the sort of coach you need, especially when you're bottom of the league and struggling for wins. He's got experience, and that should hopefully get him over the line in terms of negativity.
John Walker, what should we think about Omonia Nicosia? They've got the former Rangers defender Philippe Helander in their ranks, but what else do we know about them, and what are you predicting in terms of scoreline at Tynecastle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like Mark. I'm pretty confident that Hearts can get 3 points tonight. I think Hearts player for player. Obviously, you mentioned Jovetic not playing, but Kikulis, who came on against Vikingar and scored and kind of turned the game a little bit. That changed on a goal. That was a very even game. Vikingar had good chances. Hearts are a better side than that. I think player for player, if Hearts are flying, if Hearts are 3rd place last year the way they were going, this is a comfortable win if you add the likes of Dan Spittle and Penrice into their team. I just think Hearts are a better team than Omonia. I think that's something that I've probably championed quite a lot about Scottish football, as I feel when we come up against these teams, it's time for us to actually start showing these teams that Scottish football is a good league and better than the other second-tier leagues that are going around. I think this is a great chance for Hearts. I think if Hearts come in tonight, Hearts have got an excellent chance of getting through into the next round of this competition. I think that's where Hearts should be. I think the quality in that side is Hearts are still the top 4 sides in the country.
So Hearts victory for you, John. What scoreline are you thinking about this evening, Mark?
Yeah, I think Hearts could by 2 or 3 goals here if they really get going. But that's probably me shooting for the sky a little bit. I'll go with a 3-1 victory for Hearts. I think there will be goals though. There'll be goals.
That's all we got time for. Many thanks to Asim Rabbani, Mark Atkinson and John Walker. There is full live commentary of Hearts versus Omonia Nicosia and Rangers versus FCSB on Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland Extra tonight from 5. Live updates and comprehensive coverage on the BBC Sports Scotland website and mobile app, and reaction and analysis here on the Scottish Football Podcast. So, to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Scottish Football, the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for listening.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swebu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me? This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.